October 2019. This is the program that will bring you up to speed with the latest development in the country. A discussion coming up later on the roundtable pertaining the SGR, the economic consequences for County 001.
And of course, people questioning exactly what is the role, not necessarily people, but actually, some Jubilee members and equally, of course, who are allied to Deputy President William Ruto, or better yet, the Tanga side of course, Jubilee, asking what really is the role of Right Honorable Raila Odinga. We'll be delving that deeper into that in the declaration that he gave upon, of course, joining in of divers and, divers from South Africa. We've seen the Indian Navy, we've seen the Kenyan Navy joining forces towards ensuring that they retrieve the bodies of a mother and daughter, of course, that drowned at that point of a Likoni Channel, even as the channel has been temporarily declared a military zone as it stands today. So we'll be delving deeper into understanding what was the role, or what is actually the role of Right Honorable Raila Odinga, and why this declaration, which sounded more or less like an order, and whether it was necessary, whether it's of substance, and why it is that some of the leaders sort of feel like maybe we should not go, or maybe the people at that particular point should not go by that declaration.
And as the curtains fell on the 2019 IAAF Championships in the Qatari capital Doha, the men and women who represented the country yesterday jetted back, and they were welcomed in pomp and flower. Congratulations.
Indeed, we celebrate them. They've always made us, yes, they've always made us proud.
Yes.
And some of these things we actually anticipate, but then we cannot stop celebrating them, because when we celebrate them, of course, they'll continue carrying the flag even higher. Indeed, it's, of course, there are very many of them, and we are very happy, of course, all highlighted on the pages, on the front pages of papers, and equally on the last very pages on the sports beat of the papers that we'll be discussing later on, just taking a look at how best, of course, we can do to ensure that we ensure this sport and generally the sports arena in the country is well catered for, because then this is indeed something that needs to be celebrated.
And of course, the paper does wonderfully illustrate on page 39 of the Standard newspaper, and equally on the back end of the Daily Nation, how they managed to scoop the gold medals and became the second team after the United States of America. Of course, that again, mathematically speaking, to the fact, 400 million population. Well, they participate in every element. That's perhaps why they are top of the world. It comes, of course, what we have witnessed in Doha, Qatar.
Indeed, celebrations, and of course, congratulations to them. Did I say my name?
No.
I didn't say my name.
My
name is Linda. Yes, please.
Yes, she is Linda Alela Wengo from the county, Vihiga County.
Why are you lying? But yeah, it's true. Wengo from Vihiga County. I think that's all you want to know about me for now.
Well, and many might wanted to have knowledge about that, probably.
Yes, true. True.
Everyone now has certain home county where he calls home.
But there's just something about me that would tell you that I'm from that region. Ile anipatieko sometimes will not run away from me. Yeah, right. But yes, that aside, of course, and a couple of other things that we'll be discussing. As Sheikh has said, we'll be taking a look at the SGR tussle that is there. Of course, SGR and truck drivers. It's a developing story, so we just pick on some key points about it, and we see where it's going to land us, of course, economically. And Ben Kinuthi is the person who will be joining us on the panel. So indeed, it's a show that you do not want to miss out on. Ensure that you keep it right here, and even important, interact with us. #Newday KE, SMS short code 40920.
And the number is 0791 478 And then this important story on all the front pages of the Standard, the Daily Nation, and the Star newspaper about
we call it Justice for the Dead.
Chilling account, which was yesterday given in the High Court in Milimani over the murder of Willie Kimani and his client, and also the taxi driver who were brutally murdered in 2016.
One would look at that as justice, finally. But is there justice for the dead?
Well, depending on, of course, we have a very elaborate and independent judiciary.
Right.
And this again explains why 3 years later this case still is afresh and has been heard to the extent that a police informer's account was yesterday given, and the court was told how the three were murdered allegedly by police officers, because they are innocent until proven guilty by a court of law.
And damning reports coming on board, of course, as to how much the police officers have, in a way, disappointed us hugely. Of course, you look at them as the people who are supposed to take care of you. But from the events that we also witnessed yesterday, there was this robbery, of course, that was ongoing at some...
That happened in Isili.
In Isili or Pangani?
It was in Isili.
It was in Isili.
Yeah,
and you can imagine the very same people are police men and women who are supposed to be protecting us, are supposed to be guiding us. But in this case, they're the ones who decided that they're going to conduct that act of robbery. It's quite unfortunate. Of course, we'll be taking a look at that briefly, just to get to understand where the security of the country stands in the event that we have such men of honor.
Okay, then before we get to the nitty-gritty details of what we have in store for you this Tuesday morning here on the program, we first of all take a look at the headlines.
Front page of the Standard newspaper, inside police killer squad.
The Daily Nation does detail confession in court, how they were killed in cold blood. Speaker. All right, welcome back. We now take a look at what the papers do entail this Tuesday morning. And as you have seen up on your screens just seconds ago, the confession yesterday made in court by a police informant through a police officer on how the three, Willie Kimani, his client and taxi driver, were brutally murdered in 2016. A chilling account which again opens up a floodgate of accusations upon the police in the country and the authority that is ought to be protecting lives and property of Kenyans. This happened in 2016, still a fresh case in court, and 4 police officers are in custody over the murder of Willie Kimani, the human rights lawyer, Joseph Muiruri, the taxi driver, and Josephat Mwenda, Mr. Kimani's client, who was at the epicenter of the case that involved an administration police officer. It's detailed on page 4 and page 5 of the Daily Nation edition. Equally carried on the front page of the Star newspaper, 3 chilling hours before Kimani murder his client and the taxi driver Joseph Muiruri. The police informant reveals to court how and who murdered the city lawyer in 2016. And equally there is a breakdown on the planning, the recruitment, the trailing, the fake arrest, the argument, the execution, and how they reverted back to their respective positions later that day after carrying out the execution. Peter Ngugi is the man whose account was yesterday presented to the court on his behalf by a police officer who is investigating the murder of Willie Kimani, his client, and the taxi driver. We move to the page 4 of the Daily Nation, and of course it does pertain the protests or the demonstrations in the county of Mombasa 001 over the cargo order, which continues to elicit reactions amid the, of course, concerns by the county government of Mombasa and the people, the locals in general the coast region, of a study done by the University of Nairobi over the impact economically the SGR will have and the consequences on the economy of Mombasa County. As of now, 17 billion Kenya shillings in revenue has been lost by the county of Mombasa, and the government, though, maintained it has suspended order to haul cargo using the standard gauge railway. We'll seek the sentiments of Benki Nudia here on the program in about 10 minutes time from now. And equally, this will be an interesting point with which we'll want to talk about the political aspect in the country. The cartoon edition of the Daily Nation does, of course, detail Raila Odinga's impact in the ruling Jubilee Party. Of course, it is an illustration of how he's calling the shots. This, of course, came during in the ongoing Likoni tragedy, which happened about a week ago, 10 days after that tragedy, in which a woman and her daughter did drown from the ferry, and how Raila Odinga is at the top of the vehicle yet manages to control the steering, meaning that he is the one who determines the direction of the vehicle, while President Uhuru Kenyatta is at the front chair where there is the steering, but however has no impact at all politically regarding what's happening. And the passenger at the back seat is the Deputy President William Ruto, whose support team of the Tanga Tanga element came out to, of course, castigate the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga over his proposal for the stoppage of the tragedy, the ongoing rescue efforts in Likoni, and how this generally is impacting the cohesion of the ruling Jubilee Party amid reports of a further disintegration made evident by the build-up politically in the forthcoming Kibra parliamentary by-elections, of course, slated for the 7th of November 2019. Across our counties, in Meru County, Farmers seek information on distribution of 3 billion Kenya shillings aimed at reviving coffee farming. The growers fear if money is paid through their cooperatives, they might not benefit greatly amid concerns of corruption and money ending up in the wrong hands. You can equally read on why a man has denied 2 counts of impersonating a police officer in Nyeri County, and equally in Nakuru County. A boy 13-year-old charged with defiling an infant. Interesting story there. And in Tana River County, failure to pay contractor delays the opening of a market which is meant for development. Siaya, Narok, West Pokot, Trans Nzoia, Vihiga, Garissa and Nairobi are equally detailed on the county edition of the Daily Nation. At the back page, though, the men and women who represented the country in the just concluded IAAF Championships in the Qatari capital, Doha, and the world beaters Jetback now shift focus to the 2020 Tokyo, the capital city of Japan, Olympics that will be happening in next summer. This as Kenya managed to finish in position 2, just behind the United States of America. The homecoming, however, was pumpy and it was arousing the only athletes to retain their respective titles in Doha. However, they will take a short break before starting preparations for the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Summer Games scheduled for July 2020. Coming to the side edition of the Tuesday part, and how, of course, all that happened in regard to the chilling evidence yesterday given in court by the police informant through an investigating officer on the murder, the brutal murder, which was gruesome, of Willie Kimani, the human rights lawyer, his client, Joseph Mwenda, and Josephat Muiruri, the taxi driver, who were all murdered in 2016, just after stepping out of the Mavoko Law Court after hearing of the case and the subsequent murder. Likoni tragedy is still ongoing. The channel declared military zone as such is on, and there are, of course, cooperation between the Kenya Navy and the other divers who have been sourced from outside the country. Now, the cartoon edition, though, of the Star newspaper today does detail an interesting bit or element of what is transpiring in the country regarding, of course, the showcasing or the interpretation of how Raila Odinga is having an impact ever since the handshake in the country regarding, of course, the political bromance and the truce between the president and the opposition chief Raila Odinga, whose orders, of course, were castigated or faulted by the Tanga element of the ruling Jubilee Party, who are allied to the Deputy President William Ruto, and why Raila Odinga thinks he is entitled to give orders according to the paper. It does illustrate how he is, of course, the determinant factor here, but many have come out to support him, saying that in his capacity as the African Union Special Representative for High Infrastructure, he is mandated to oversee and perhaps take or make a decision regarding the ongoing rescue effort in Likoni to retrieve the bodies of the woman and her daughter who drowned about 10 days ago and are still underwater. Of course, it has been a tragedy which brought many questions forth regarding the magnitude of the government to cope with a tragedy or, an incident of such magnitude in the country. So now we get to Linda, but before that, later, we'll be talking about what's happening regarding the U.S. pullback from northern Syria and why this has given Turkey the go-ahead in terms of military operation in northern Syria and what it exactly wants to achieve amid Donald Trump's, of course, fulfillment of the 2016 campaign pledges regarding pulling the U.S. troops from foreign overseas wars. But first, Linda is up and on with regards to the news that our team managed to put up together as of yesterday. And here we go. There we are. Linda.
Yes, indeed, on the sad occurrence at Likoni is exactly what also my team has been following up on, and of course they kick us off with this particular story. As search and recovery operations for the Likoni ferry accident victims entered day 8 yesterday with hope that the body of the mother and daughter will be retrieved soon. Now, the government has responded to the rescue operations by declaring the area a no-go zone for the members of the public ahead of the multi-agency search for the bodies of the ferry tragedy victims.
Kenya Ferry Services Chairman Dan Mwazo said the area will only be accessible to military and officials from the Kenya Ferry Services. The area is now under the command of the Navy and the KFS bosses. Mwanzo also said the divers who have been hired by the family from the subsea company and those from Subtech from South Africa will also access the area. The rescue effort were on Monday halted for some time to allow for 4 naval ships from the Indian military to dock at the Likoni wharf. Mwazo was optimistic that the Indian military officers might help in the search and recovery efforts. A week ago, mother and daughter drowned when their vehicle plunged into the Indian Ocean after easing off a faulty prow of the Kilindeni ferry. Davis Mberia, Ebru TV.
And to a story that will also be briefly touching on the roundtable, former police informer Peter Ngugi yesterday detailed the events that led to the murder of lawyer Willie Kimani and 2 others. Now, through the confession presented by Chief Inspector Geoffrey Kinyua in court before Justice Jesse Lesit, Ngugi revealed that he was hired by Sergeant Frederick Leilman to execute the killings. Our reporter Jeff Haimba attended court proceedings and filed the following report.
In what all seems to be a paradox in the murder of lawyer Willie Kimani, former police informer Peter Ngugi on Monday opened the Pandora box on what exactly led to the murder of Kimani and 2 others in the year 2016. During the confession made by Chief Inspector Geoffrey Kinyua on behalf of Ngugi, who is now among the 5 suspects in the murder case, the killings were well orchestrated before the execution of Kimani, his client Joseph Mwenda, and the taxi driver Joseph Mwiruri.
Sergeant Leilman had told me that Sergeant Mwangi was part of the operation plans.
Peter Ngugi says he was only hired by Sergeant Frederick Leilman, the first accused, after a meeting they held at Mlolongo. During the meeting, Leilman revealed that he needed assistance from Ngugi over the case he was battling with. The case was about Joseph Mwenda, a border rider who had been knocked down by Leilman and was required to step aside, in the case being pursued by lawyer Willie Kimani and IPOA. Leilman wanted Mwenda to be killed, at least to save his job. On June 23, 2016, Ngugi left his house and went to Mlolongo. On the way, he met Leilman, who was with the lady, and the lady was to identify the wanted border man to him at the Mavoko locals.
He dropped us at Mlolongo stage to take a matatu to Mavoko Low Court. I also remember that he had given me another 2,000 shillings the previous day for fare. The lady showed me the alleged wanted man, told me Kamutu yako ndio huyo.
After the court session, Ngugi made the trails of Mwenda Kamar by his lawyer Willie Kimani, who took a taxi being driven by Joseph Mwiruri. Ngugi accompanied by Leilman and Leonard Mwangi followed the wanted men who were abducted a few minutes after taking off. The 3 were taken to Syokimau Administration Police Post.
Sergeant Mwangi told them that we were officers and they were under arrest. I switched off 4 of the 5 phones and I was unable to switch off 1.
At around 7 p.m., Ngugi, Leilman and Mwangi handcuffed the 3, placed them in a cupboard before driving them to a bushy destination for the execution.
Each of the prisoners was handcuffed from behind. The first victim, who was the main target, he was strangled to death using a rope. His body was put in a sack and then put in the boot of the Toyota NZE. At around 11 p.m., the second victim was picked. He was killed in the same style.
Ngugi revealed how they killed Kimani and 2 other victims before their bodies were dumped in the Oldonya Sabuk River. His job was to remove the victims from the boot of the car and hand them to the police for the execution.
After all the 3 victims were killed, we drove through Roiro, Makogeni, that is Garissa Road, up to Donyo Sabuk. Removed the 2 bodies from the wing road and threw them into the river.
The case for the 4 AP officers, Frederick Leilman, Stephen Chaburet, Sylvia Wanjiku, and Leonard Maina Mwangi, together with Peter Ngugi, the police informer, shall continue tomorrow under Justice Jesse Lesit. Reporting for Ebru TV, I'm Jeff Haimba.
And from the corridors of justice to matters education, the Teacher Service Commission has officially announced vacancies for 10,300 interns to be posted to primary and secondary education, or secondary school, next month. Now, there has been a shortage of teachers in the sector, with the government still adamant on the 100% transition from primary to secondary school.
The huge recruitment drive is a desperate shot at easing a served teacher shortage at the basic education sector, currently standing at more than 100,000. It also comes at a time when the government is pushing for the implementation of the new competency-based curriculum. TSC Chief Executive Officer Nancy Macharia has invited those qualified to send their application by October 23rd. A total of 4,300 will be deployed in primary school, while 6,000 will be sent to secondary school. This is the first time that the TSC is hiring interns in what is simply a stopgap measure to avert a learning crisis in public schools. The Commission was allocated 3.2 billion to plug the shortage and has already recruited 5,000 on permanent terms, a figure that is less than half the yearly demand of about 12,626 new teachers. The recruitment will cost the Commission about 1.2 billion. The shortage in secondary school, which have 2.8 million students, has risen to 95,258 from the previous 57,380 in November last year. In primary school, which hold about 10 million pupils, the shortage stands at 30,357, leading to an overall of 125,615. This comes after 36 teachers were sacked after they were accused by the Commission for professional misconduct and further alleging that the said teachers were engaging in sexual relation with their students, thus forcing the hand of the Nancy Macharia-led Commission to remove the names of the 36 from the registry. The Commission is currently probing sexual scandals and illegal relationship with learners, with the determination expected to be out before November. Apart from illicit relationship, some teachers were axed last month for failing to attend training on the competency-based curriculum CBC and disrupting the exercise in various centers across the country. There has been a cry from different parts of the country where teachers are few and cannot cater for all the students in their respective institutions.
Now, the government will not condone extrajudicial killings, radicalization and extremism. This is according to Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i, who urged the Muslim leaders to work with his ministry, maintaining that radicalization is not about Islam. Now, the tough-talking CS also remained optimistic that the war on gambling in the country is bearing fruit. Winnie Lubembe with more details.
Speaking at a meeting with Muslim leaders at Jamia Mosque, CS Matiang'i emphasized that radicalization is not practiced by either Muslims or Christians, but rather by criminals.
These mad people had all of us. They had Muslims as much as they had Christians and faithfuls from other religions. We should never allow them to thrive in our midst.
The tough-talking CS also regretted that there is no policy on major vices in the society, among them extrajudicial killings. Matiang'i is, however, happy with the ongoing crackdown on gambling machines and betting companies in the country, urging Kenyans to join the government in curbing betting.
I have never been more resolute on something than I am on this. This thing is destroying our people. Let us not accept it. There is no country, show me one country on earth that has been built as a result of this gambling.
Speaking at the same meeting, National Assembly Majority Leader Aden Duale said that cases of drugs, extremism and radicalization should be addressed with urgency.
We should not be only the ones who are lamenting, oh, our guy has been arrested. Yes. Or somebody has been arrested. We must be part and parcel of protecting the national security interests of Kenya and its people.
The Garissa Township Member of Parliament also echoed the CS's message on banning gambling in the country. The Director of Public Prosecution, Nurdin Haji, however, had a different opinion.
We have a lot of challenges that we are facing. If you look at the cost, for example, the issues of drugs, the issues of organized crime, and these are all being perpetuated by our fellow Muslim brothers and others.
Also in attendance was the Inspector General of Police, Hilary Mutyambai, and Secretary General of the Kenya Red Cross Society, Abbas Gulet. Kenya has become a prime location for Al-Shabaab radicalization and recruitment amid terror groups' rise in Somalia. As early as 2012, reports indicated that Al-Shabaab was attracting a large number of Kenyan converts to Islam. Winnie Lubembe for Ebru TV.
Clear the path.
Thanks, Winnie. Now, despite last week's efforts by the national government to quell the weekly demos, of course within Mombasa, over the order that all cargo should be transported by the standard gauge railway, police who now engaged in running battles with protesters had to use tear gas to disperse human rights activists and truck drivers who were demonstrating over the suspended government directive.
The residents have made it their business to demonstrate every Monday until the order, which they say has had adverse effects on the economy of Mombasa and other towns, reversed. Police officers were to have all imported cargo transported to the hinterland via SGR. The police lobbed tear gas canisters to disperse the protesters. Muslim for Human Rights Francis Auma, Haki Africa's Hussein Khalid were among those arrested. Several of the activists and truckers were also injured in the process. The activists, including Muslims for Human Rights and Fast Action Businesses communities, have been organizing the protest since last month. This is despite last week, where the Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i and Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joho were reading from the same script in regards to the threat.
I've said it before in Parliament when I was summoned by the Committee of Transport. And we said that because the directive had been issued by the CG of KRA and the MD of KPA without full consultations, within 2 days actually, we directed that it be reversed and it remains suspended.
And we have been in that meeting for a good part of this morning.
To seek partnership, more particularly on the challenges that we are facing as a county or as a region or the entire corridor.
The two did not reveal the details of the deal, which is meant to placate Coastal to soften their stand. The order, which has since been lifted, attracted condemnation from Coastal residents who are vowing to disrupt Mashujaa Day celebration as a way of showing displeasure. And it seems today the charades have made the fate of the event lie in limbo.
Now, walking for justice from Cherangani Hills to Nairobi has been the norm for the community of Sengwer from Embobu Forest. Now, they walk with only one purpose, that of reminding the state of its obligation to safeguard their right to ancestral land, and forced evictions and other human rights violations that have taken place in Embobu Forest for many decades. Odi Francis now reports on that particular occurrence.
The Sengwer indigenous people are a distinct ethnic indigenous community who primarily live in the Cherangani Hills, Embobu Forest in the North Rift of Kenya, across Trans Nzoia, West Pokot and Elgeyo Marakwet counties.
Watu forest walichoma manyumba, tukaenda kulala kwa msitu. Hatukuwa tunajua mahali penye tutaenda tena.
Tunaunga mkono kutetea haki zao za tangu jadi, kwamba wamenyimwa haki zao. Ni jamii ndogo ambayo haitambuliki rasmi na vyombo vya dola katika taifa la Kenya. Haitambuliki kama jamii zingine za Kenya, hawana uwakilishi ima bungeni ama hata katika serikali za mashinani.
So they are a community that is so connected to land and forest for their survival. You extract the forest out of them, you have destroyed their identity and their survival.
The community has faced numerous forceful evictions, including the one recently of 2018 that led to the death of one person, Robert Kiprotich, a member of the Sengwer community. The petition had 270,000 signatures of community members, friends and neighbors who support the community to be given access to the 21,000 hectares in Embobu Forest.
Tangu Kenya ipate uhuru,
hakuna kupumzika ile watu wa Embaputo wamepumzika, wamechomewa manyumba, wamefanyiwa nini, wamewawa. Kama hii sasa kesi ambayo unasikia kesi iko kotini saa hii, ng'ombe zao zinatawanyishwa na hao askari ya forest.
After walking and protesting over 500 kilometers, the Sengwer community presented a petition to the president's office at Harambe House seeking to be recognized as an indigenous community living in the Embobut forest.
Hata mimi pia sasa nikiwa mambo ya forest ilikuwa ni mwaka 1988. Mpaka sasa niko 27 nikibukuso kwa msitu kijua mambo ya forest. So naona hii maisha ni ngumu sana na hakuna mahali utaenda.
So the Sengwer came today and said we want to go and present this to the President of Kenya, His Excellency Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, and remind them that he swore to protect the Constitution of Kenya, and here we are supposed to be protected, and our rights to ancestral land must be protected.
Sisi tumekuja Nairobi kutaka kujua haki yetu, na tunaomba sana rais wetu Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta, yeye hata anaweza chukua hata sekunde 5 peke yake, sekunde 5 tu kusema kwamba Wasengwer wapewe mambo yao ikwe nywe.
They now urge the president to ensure that the Sengwer people's rights to ancestral land are protected as enshrined in the constitution, a speedy conclusion in the inquest of the death of Robert Kiprotich, and ensure the responsible Kenyan forestry officers are brought to book, and restitutions for the victims of forced evictions and other human rights. For Ebru TV, I'm Ode Francis.
Well, such scenarios play out highly in most of the African countries. You'll always find this group that feels like it has been marginalized. I know the issues of historical injustices of land, always an issue. But of course, we certainly hope that this is going to be addressed well, to ensure that, you know, there's that right that is protected for the sake of the unity of the country. That aside, I think it's important now that I take that short breather, just pay some bills, and of course we'll be coming back later on the broadcast as we cross over to the round table. Ben Kinothia already on set. I guess he's the lucky man who's going to be on set with us this morning. And of course, as we get to discuss, you know, the SGR versus the track tussle that has been witnessed. You've seen that story that we've just run. And equally, of course, what then is the role of Right Honorable Raila Odinga? A question that very many people are asking in the event that he has the confidence and the power to go ahead and, you know, dish out orders, and orders that indeed are followed in a way. We all agree that he's a seasoned politician and, of course, has so much influence in the country, and not just in the country, but technically on matters leadership. But then the people would ask, how then is he coming on board to issue such declarations, yet he's not, as one would say, part and parcel of the government. He's still the opposition leader. But then, of course, thanks to the handshake, then we are able to get him, of course, coming on board and also joining the president and equally the rest of the leaders, or the rest of the leadership, towards ensuring that, you know, different issues are addressed in the country. We also take a look at the factor of justice, and we ask a question, a pertinent question: is there justice for the dead? Of course, this, even as that declaration came out, or maybe that, of course, confession came out yesterday in court in regards to the killing of a lawyer, Kimani. Of course, we'll be discussing that and just get to hear what the panel has to say, or maybe what Ben Kinothia has to say over these pertinent issues that affect us as a country. We cross over for that. Rita will be back. Also later on, we'll be taking a look at the international scene, what is happening in the African scene, and equally what is happening on the roads, just so we keep you posted in the event that you're stepping out after this break.
People say things like, close your eyes, visualize with me. It's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. What does your house look like? What does your car look like? Imagine having a house with a swimming pool, and you got the jacuzzi, and inside your bedroom you have a gym, and it's a 4-story, you got elevator, you got this view, you got... Okay, that's great. But how about we do it in a different way? Close your eyes, go 20 years from now, and you don't do nothing. You stay the same as you are today. How many divorces you got?
What happened to your family? How does your dad look at you in the face? How does your mom look at you in the face? How about the people that said you're going to quit and they say, I told you so? Every single time you have to appease to their opinion becoming factual because you gave up on your dreams. And if you're okay with that, keep living life the way you're living. If that does put the fear and concern in you, you best change today. And if you don't make it, guess what? You have self-respect because at least you gave the fight. At least you fought. At least you got in the ring. At least you look at yourself in the mirror and says, dude, I'm good. I lost to a guy that's better than me, but I worked my ass off. I can live with that. I can't live with the unknown if I didn't give my effort.
What could you be? What could you be? What could you be if you worked as hard as you could? What could you be if you imposed real discipline in your life? What could you be?
What if I could?
What if I can pull this off?
What if I could pull off this miracle?
What if I can become someone that no one thinks I can be?
How will I feel at the very end if I can defy all the odds?
I say you crank up the volume on that question, max it out, and then go get some.
Only those who are willing to risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go. I want to see how far I can go. I want to see what I can accomplish. I want to see what I can do, what I can be, what I can have. I want to see. I don't want to see what I think I can do. I don't want to see what I think is possible. I want to see what my life would look like if I didn't count the cost. Because if you count the cost and you see how much it costs, you might quit. So you got to go in knowing that I don't count the cost. I do as many push-ups as it takes, as many sit-ups as it takes, as many reps as it takes. I pay whatever the price is. You get to a point where you don't count it. You just do whatever it takes to get whatever you want.
All right, welcome back. We now take a look at the developments internationally, and we start off with the main headline across the globe. America's pullback from northern Syria. Key questions answered here, and it regards, of course, the U.S., which makes way for Turkey to launch a major military operation in northern Syria. And what you need to know here is that Turkey has had an interest regarding, of course, the development that pertains the revolution in Syria ever since the 2011 plans to topple President Bashar al-Assad from power, and the powers that had been scrambling over the influence in that country, which of course led to the fallout. And they do include Russia, the United States of America, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, which now wants to create a sort of buffer zone or a safe zone between the southern side of Turkey and the northern part of Syria. Of course, it does regard the Kurdish front, which is fighting the Islamic State group, as terrorist organization, and this is seen as perhaps a move by the Kurds as one that will lead to human rights violations, especially following the planned military operation by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. However, though, President Donald Trump's administration is criticized by especially the representatives in the House of the Senate, who are Republicans, over the move. Though President Trump himself in 2016 did pledge that he will pull back American troops from overseas wars, which he said was costly in terms of life and in terms of course, resources. And this is also a similar script which is applied by the Trump administration when it comes to Afghanistan and the ongoing 18-year battle between the Taliban and the NATO forces in Afghanistan, despite, of course, the historic elections which happened about a fortnight ago, which led, of course, to some security challenges from the Taliban group, despite the cancelled Camp David summit between representatives of the Taliban and President Donald Trump. So matters that also pertain the elections in Tunisia are featured here, up top story, and no party or entity can form a government in Tunisia following the historic elections, the second one since the 2011 revolution in Tunisia. The ruling party Ennahda cannot form a coalition, cannot form a government, and will need some sort of political partnership from the Heart of Tunisia party. But again, according to its supporters, that might lead to political confusion owing to the bedrock principle of the Heart of Tunisia party that they do consider as a conservative party. Of course, this is the second election, which happened ever since the ouster of President Zain Abidine Ben Ali, who was overthrown after the starting of the 2011 Arab Spring in a town just on the outskirts of the capital, Tunis, which of course led to widespread effect across the Arab world, and to be specific, up top of the northern part of the continent, which led to the also ouster of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya and Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, equally Ali Abdullah Saleh in Yemen, despite the hijacking of the revolution in Egypt. Though there is an impeachment inquiry into Trump, the forthcoming of the second whistleblower in the United States of America regarding the conduct of President Donald Trump, who was accused by authorities in the U.S., and to be specific, one person, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, who said that Trump has abused the presidential privilege powers in wanting a political leverage from the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky over that phone call which happened in the summer when they discussed Joe Biden, the former U.S. Vice President who deputized President Barack Obama for 8 years at the White House. Trump, according to the transcript of the issued phone call conversation, did of course hold a $400 million military aid to Ukraine before the phone call and wanted the authorities in the capital Kiev to investigate Joe Biden, a possible contender for the presidential seat in 2020 amid the ongoing Democratic nomination process, and his son, who sits on one of the boards in Ukrainian oil and gas company. According to authorities in Washington, D.C., this is likely an abuse of presidential powers. And the second whistleblower is coming up from inside the White House, who said he has first-hand information, and his lawyer has presented that to the authorities investigating this. And this, first of all, will take place at the House of Representatives level, where the Democrats have the majority, and then that will proceed to the Senate, where the Republicans have the majority with a number of 20 senators. It means that President Trump has to lose 20 senators for him to be formally impeached as the President of the United States of America. Not for the first time, though, happening in the U.S. Bill Clinton faced a similar scenario, though he survived. So was Richard Nixon in the Watergate scandal in the early 1970s, and in 1848, when the U.S. President was then to be impeached in such a scenario. The fourth one, though, happening in the Trump administration amid the ongoing allegations of Trump abusing the presidential powers in the United States of America. Protests in Hong Kong regarding that face mask ban, and the leader of the independent island and territory, Carrie Lam, says that in the event the situation gets out of control, then the authorities will now intervene and take control of the matter. It's been months of demonstration against the government, and all started after the proposal of an extradition bill by the Carrie Lam administration, which, according to the protesters and pro-democracy lawmakers in the island, which is a self-independent territory since, of course, parting away from China in 1997, and a British colony, is, according to them, perhaps one that would be subject to abuse and manipulation by the authorities in mainland Beijing. However, though, Beijing says that it's watching events in Hong Kong with bated breath and awaiting what the consequences are going to be, despite, of course, the faulting of the administration of President Xi Jinping by the foreign powers, including the United Kingdom and the United States of America, regarding the conduct of the security authorities. However, though, transport and all other sectors have been implicated because of the protest, and all flights have been cancelled at one point in Hong Kong following the demonstration, which intensified, leading to also the cancellation of the train routes which ply in the city of Hong Kong. And that has led to, of course, economic consequences regarding the financial market and also the impact it has had on people's lives as these protests continue in Hong Kong. So there are also developments regarding what's happening in Iraq following the protests over the government's plan, and the fact that the protesters do say that the government has mismanaged or mishandled the economy in Iraq, and the president has come out to apologize to the protesters, accused the authorities of high-handedness, and he said there is need for talk to iron out the differences. What they want, though, is a need for economic revamping of the Iraqi economy, and they say that there's need for structural change in Iraq, and this has been, of course, a signifying element ever since the ouster of President Saddam Hussein in 2003 following the US-led invasion. Two subsequent prime ministers, Haidar al-Abadi and Nouri al-Maliki, also faced similar fate with regards to, of course, the widening gap of the Sunni and the Shia divide, which was made evident by the fact that the US-led coalition led to a fallout in terms of the religious sects in Iraq under Saddam, which according to analysts was a safe political zone. But the vacuum also led to the creation of ISIL, which took over the cities of Mosul and also spread into the Rasul region and parts of Syria, and continues to be a headache for the US-led coalition and the airstrikes, which continue to hit its targets across Iraq and Syria, despite now losing grounds and the impact it has once had, and of course gained traction of what at some point led to the en masse migration of people from Europe to join its ranks in Syria and Iraq. So those are the major developments in the international arena, notwithstanding, of course, developments in Iran that we await regarding the 2015 nuclear accord, and later, of course, we'll see how the traffic update is here on the program after coming back from the break. But now, for now, I'll cross over to my colleague Linda on the other side of the studio, seated with Ben Kinuthia, to take us through the most important elements of what's transpiring in the country. Of course, it does pertain the developments regarding the chilling evidence given yesterday in the High Court in Milimani here in Nairobi, leading to of course, the gruesome murder of Willie Kimani, his client, and the taxi driver. All the three major newspapers in the country did run with that headline, and again brings to forth extrajudicial killings, and the police are at the pivotal point of that. Linda.
All right, thank you so much, Sheikh, for taking us through what is happening on the international scene. But now coming back to the roundtable, like he rightfully puts it, we're here with Ben Kinuthia, who's a lawyer, of course, joining us this morning to discuss on the issues that we have picked, of course, in regards to what has been happening right here in the country. We take a look at, of course, the demonstrations that are ongoing between SGR and the tractors, or maybe truck drivers who are demonstrating out there. Actually, they are not, it's not between SGR, but they are demonstrating in argument that, yes, SGR is coming in handy to ensure that they are rendered jobless. So we'll be discussing that later on. But first of all, we start off with this particular factor of justice, and now justice being delivered at that point of death when someone is already dead. Just taking a look at, all the newspapers, this is the biggest story. And equally, when you watch, if you watch News at All yesterday, and of course most of the stations this morning, you realize that this is the story that has been talked about for the longest of time. 3 years down the line, at some point in time, we had this hashtag Willie Kimani, hashtag Justice for Willie. Almost all lawyers coming on board to say that they need to find justice for Willie. And today, indeed, going by the events of yesterday, the reports that we received yesterday, the evidence and the speaking out, of course, that we received yesterday, a clear indication that finally we get answers as to this mysterious, killings and murder of these three figures. And now, of course, coming into this factor and just taking a look at what has played out in the country, this is not the first time that we're witnessing this. Numerous cases are on board as to the question of murder. Before we delve deep into this particular story, I think it's important that then we look at it as maybe a sigh of relief, as people would argue, that finally, we get an answer to, of course, a case that has been ongoing for the longest of time. Is this then indeed a sign that we are towards the right direction in terms of addressing these gruesome murders that are still remain, of course, a mystery?
A very good morning, and thank you very much. I think as a lawyer, this is something to be celebrated, because first and foremost, it shows that our investigative agencies are able to start doing their work the way they should. Mm-hmm. It also shows that the nation is growing to the point that we are able to seek justice in the corridors of justice, mm-hmm. and we are able to get that justice. You see, the purpose of law is not just to punish the wrongdoers, it's also to deter. So if we are able to get into a case like this and deal with it conclusively, mm-hmm. to the point that we see heads roll and people are put in prison, mm-hmm. then what that does is it serves to remind everybody else who is out there that if you committed a similar crime, there is a precedent that it has been done, Kenya can do it, mm-hmm. and it has happened. Mm-hmm. So we applaud everybody who has been involved in the fight for this justice. We applaud everybody who has made a contribution, everybody who's given evidence, mm-hmm. all sorts of efforts that have been made, because this is for the first time now, we are getting a situation whereby we are getting justice, and that justice is coming from the courts, mm-hmm. which shows that it's a very good thing.
All right.
Mm-hmm. All right. When, of course, you view it from another end too, because we'll not want to have a discussion regarding extrajudicial killings in the country, or allegations of killing by the police without looking at the reports issued by the Independent Policing and Oversight Authority, IPOA. And since 2019, it managed to receive cases numbering up to 290. 30 are active in court, 190 are being investigated. Looking at that and how it has managed to be an entity which remained as a check on police, and given the situations that we have on the well-orchestrated, engineered murders of Willie Kimani, Joseph Muiruri, and Josephat Mwenda, does it give the judiciary the muscle to which it needs to set that important precedent you mentioned, and to what extent does it perhaps reveal the extent of confidence of the public in the judiciary in regard to, of course, what many thought might not be afresh 3 years down the line?
Okay, I think first and foremost, we need to understand the circumstances that lead to extrajudicial killing. And sometimes before you get to understand the whole story, we tend to think that the police are extremely bad and horrible. Mm-hmm. I am going through a mediation process where we are discussing something that could have started off as assault. Mm-hmm. But when we got into the details, we realized that there was a person who was being arrested for something that they had done, which was wrong. And they started by insulting the police officers. Mm-hmm. And in the effort of the police officers trying to restrain, the guy started boxing the police officers. And they returned in kind. They punched him properly. And when they punched him properly, yes, because it was punch for punch. When they punched him properly, by the time they were getting to the police station, there was a lot of evidence on him that he had been beaten up. But there was nothing to show that he had beaten up the policeman. So, and he was looking for a P3, and he wanted to go to court, and he wanted to sue the policeman. So sometimes some of these murders occur in the process of policemen trying to protect something which was smaller, like an assault. It ends up in a murder because you are hoping, you're looking at it this way, you've been accused of assault and you might lose your job. So sometimes they tend to think if we got rid of this person, then even the smaller charge of assault would not occur. So even upon the citizen, we need to learn how to deal with police officers. These people sometimes are under a lot of pressure and so on and so forth. And I think sometimes I usually tell people, if a police officer is coming to arrest you and take you to a police station,
oblige.
A police station is not hell. In fact, it's one of the best places to be. Because if anything happened to you within a police cell, now it becomes even a more interesting situation. But if you are fighting and trying to resist arrest, in most of the cases, you end up in a very difficult situation. I'm not saying these people who were killed, that's what happens, because dead men tell no tales. But the truth is, for those people who willingly oblige to go to a police station, you're better off handling your case from a police station than on the streets or in some dark place, which might lead to you being killed. So I usually tell people, if the police have come to arrest you, and if you are sure and certain that these are police officers, they are not guys dressed in police uniform, then the best thing is to even tell them, I can even come to that police station. I can even drive my own car and follow you to the police station. You're better off having your family coming to you at the police station than having a scuffle with the police in between where you're being arrested to the police station.
Okay. Before you go to that point, Ayub, of course, we witnessed that, yes, indeed, there's some police who's trying to protect themselves in this particular issue based on a case that was ongoing. And we also take a look at the events of yesterday and a couple of other events that have been pinpointed, you know, that there are some heinous acts that are conducted with police, you know, no shame, no nothing. The CCTV clip that played out yesterday, they, you know, moving into different pubs and, you know, just frustrating the people who were taking their time right there. Of course, within the very scheduled time that is supposed to be, or, you know, stipulated time. So what do you make of such? It's okay, there are situations whereby indeed policemen, of course, would always go out there trying to get themselves. But in occurrences where, of course, we witness them doing some of these rogue activities, don't you think at a point in time then we need to go back to the drawing board and understand that these are men who are supposed to be men of honor, they've undergone training, proper training for that matter, but then again, they go to extents of doing things that are not right, in uniform, without even worrying what really could be ailing the police sector?
I think we need to understand these things in perspective. If you look at the internet, for example, there's a huge number of policemen, even in the United States, who have been known to batter people just because they're black, who have been known to do all sorts of crazy things. So this thing is not unique to Kenyan, because before people become policemen, they become Kenyans and they become human beings with a character trait of some sort.
Yeah.
And I think what needs to happen is we need to keep looking at, even as a society, who we are sending to the police force.
Right.
I remember the last recruitment, I had a family saying, ni mang'aa sana, ikifika apeleke huko kwa polisi, atakuwa anaweza kudili na wakora. Apeleke umang'aa huko. So sometimes even we as a society, these people are not coming from anywhere else. They're coming from us. We are the ones who are taking the rogue brothers and sisters that we feel are not fitting in the family, who actually probably belong to recorrectional facilities, and saying, wacha huyu aende apeleke umang'aa huko kwa AP. And then that guy goes and becomes a policeman. When he steals in uniform, it's not strange. He used to steal even when he was in primary school. He was stealing when he was in secondary. This is a character trait this person has had over a period of time, and it has not been rectified. The police training does not come to change who you truly are. The police training comes to help you learn how to handle a gun, how to handle citizens, and basically the duties of a policeman. People think that the police training comes and makes you a saint where you are a crook. If you are a crook, you are a crook. The police training does not come to remove the DNA of a crook and replace it with that of a saint. So let's not blame our police training. Let's not blame. I think it's we, the society. The products that we have given them, the raw materials we have given them, are the ones that they are working with.
That they manage to work with.
Yes.
I mean, the same people,
It's the same
but in different clothing, told to enforce the law. But given that, let's also look at the flip end, with which, of course, there's an important element here you did mention earlier about the fact that many of the citizens do resist arrest when the police do approach them, and that might lead to, of course, a commotion in the public, and in many instances, we have had these murders happen on the streets rather than in the police cells. However, in the case of Willie Kimani, Joseph Muiruri, and Josephat Mwenda, they were told, stop, you are under arrest, and they obliged. They were to be taken to a police station, to be booked in the occurrence book, and to be, of course, formally charged, because if you are under arrest, then that is the process as enshrined in the Constitution. However, though, what took effect was their bodies to be found at the Oldonyo Sabuk River. Again, it brings a sort of trust issue here, which continues to degrade between the police and the members of the public, who now, in any given circumstance, when a police officer tells you you're under arrest, then one person cries out, wanting that public attention, because he fears in the event he walks away with the police officer, then he fears for his life. Again, how do we create that sort of trust between the public and the police, and also the issue about reforms, and in any given situation, is it more needed than ever now, given the situation that we are witnessing at the moment in the country?
I think it's incumbent upon the leaders within the police force to also start making changes. If, for example, you have sent out your policemen on patrol, because when you look at, for example, the case of Muiruri, and how long it took, and for how long they were gone away from their area of jurisdiction. Mind you, when the policemen are moving, they usually have this radio call. And that radio call has got a distance within which it can cover. And I don't think the one for Nairobi is supposed to go all the way to Limuru, or wherever it is that the bodies will be found. So when for any reason a policeman is not within their area of jurisdiction, something is wrong. Because before you move from Nairobi to a place like Kijabe or Limuru or any other place,
which is another jurisdiction.
How many police stations have you passed? And how many, there are so many OCSs in those jurisdictions. And even it's gone to the point where that is now the area of another OCPD. So basically, it's the leaders within the police station who are supposed to be doing their job. And sometimes things go wrong. Like now I look at Nakuma Junction every year. Every evening, there are policemen who are waiting at that corner for you to make a wrong turn. Those men, by the way, for information, had been sent on patrol to go and walk around and check where things are going wrong. But they are just there waiting for people to make a U-turn, which is a wrong turn. They stop you, they make some money, and it happens every day. You don't even need to go far. Just go there, do a documentary this evening. They'll be there. And if you ask the OCS or the OCPD in charge of the area, well, these people sent here, is there a crime that happens here? Because this is a traffic offense. If you need traffic police, send them traffic police at night. So all I'm saying is the people who are in charge of the police who are on patrol are supposed to be answerable. And in these particular cases, the OCSs and the OCPDs should have first answered, why were these policemen not within their area of jurisdiction?
3 years might sound very long for justice to be, of course, gotten at some point. But then equally, very quick in regards to the cases that we've witnessed in the country. So before we discuss on how genuine this is, I think it's important that we hit the break and then we come back, of course, and we get to expound more on why 3 years might sound so small for any other person who's been searching for justice for years without getting it.
Welcome back. You're watching the program. This is Newday Kenya, and we are, of course, it's lovely to have you on board, and we do cherish your time, and do, of course, look forward to your contributions. The number is 0791478990. The hashtag on Twitter is NewdayKE. The short SMS code is 40920. We are looking into the details, of course, yesterday presented in court here at the High Court in Milimani over the death or the gruesome murder of Willie Kimani, Joseph Muiruri, and Josephat Mwenda in 2016, as former police informer Peter Ngugi laid bare what happened and the gruesome murder of the 3 gentlemen who were killed in 2016. And we were on the point of course, Ben, talking about the issue that regards the whole heap or the sense of the continuous cases of avalanche that are presented to the Independent Policing and Oversight Authority. And of course, some of the prominent extrajudicial killings allegedly by the police include Carlington Minor, 23 years old, killed in Kibra. He was studying at the University of Leeds in the United Kingdom. And not to mention the others that are under investigations by the Independent Policing and Oversight Authority. In regard to, of course, what's happening at the moment and how the presentation was yesterday made in court and 4 police officers are in custody for that, does it again bring to forth impunity in the whole essence of cooperation between members of the police service or the disciplined to the extent that instead of protecting lives and property, they're the ones now taking the same lives, a taxpayer perhaps who might have had a significant contribution economically, and to the extent of someone like Willie Kimani, who was offering a pro bono service, and human rights lawyer who perhaps might have had a significant impact on the growth of this country. How does it explain the whole essence of the picture, and does it mirror impunity within the police service?
Okay, thank you. Sometimes it's very difficult because each case is unique. You know, it's like each marriage. It's very unique. They are all marriages, but each of them is very unique. And the circumstances of each of them is very different. But all I can say is this. First and foremost, the police sometimes find themselves in contact with people who, in many circumstances, are handling more money than themselves and who are handling more influence than themselves. If you look at the case in point, for example, these people were leaving court on that day. And this case was not going to go well for the police and for the lady who was involved in the case. And so I would say this time the police were used as a weapon. They were used to get rid of someone who was being a problem to somebody else. And it was for a fee, I would believe. So the circumstances of each case are different, and I think IPOA needs to have the opportunity to investigate each case on its own merits and demerits. But all I can say is that we need a strong IPOA that is independent, that will be able to investigate each case as it comes, because these cases will not come to an end. They have not come to an end in any developed nation, and they will not come to an end here. What we just need to do is to show Kenyans that someone is watching. And the police need to know that whatever they are doing, someone is watching. And that also, not to threaten them so that they are not able to do their duties. What we need is to have a situation where the police are able to perform their duties, but know that in the event of such an eventuality, there would be due process, because that's what matters most. Everybody wants to know that before they are condemned, due process will be followed, and once due process is followed, then they can arrive at justice. So I think that's the most important thing.
All right, lastly, allow me to ask this question, Sheikh, as we wind up. Like I said earlier on, we have numerous cases in courts that have not been addressed up until today. Ours has been considered for a long time as a criminal justice system that is faulty in a way. And nowadays, of course, when you talk about the criminal justice system, you know, it incorporates the lawyers, the investigative bodies, the, the judges and all that. So When you look at this case and finally we get answers to it, and you know that vowing by the lawyers, that vowing by the justice system that indeed they're going to get to the deep root of this, and eventually they've gotten into it, does it speak then of the kind of bias that is there in how they deal with some of these cases? Do they get lazy when they're dealing with other cases that, pertain to other Kenyans as opposed to them that, that are within this particular cycle? Because when we see this and we get answers of it, and then you start asking ourselves, what happened to the case of course, the likes of Juma, Jacob, the likes of other people who've not really gotten justice up until now, and there are likelihoods that maybe they'll never get, because then it becomes more and more twined.
I think we still forget that this society is very much intertwined. Some of these investigative bodies are appointed by people who have been mentioned as possible killers of people like Jacob Juma. So sometimes there are cases they would think of, not now as prosecutors and judges and magistrates and inspectors and so on, but as Kenyans who have families to feed. And as Kenyans who are thinking that if I got to the bottom of this, then I would have something to lose.
Yeah.
This is a good case because they're trying to make a name out of it. And the subjects involved are what they would call mere policemen, and so on and so forth. So there are some cases in life that unfortunately end up being used as what you'd call for example. And this is one of the cases that is becoming a very good for example. Yes.
Yeah, unfortunate. All right. We cross over to the next topic.
Yes, which is equally an important one as we, of course, await the court proceedings regarding the murder of Willie Kimani, Joseph Moiruri, and Josephat Mwenda, who were brutally murdered by the 4 police officers as per the testament given in court yesterday by police informer Peter Ngugi through the Chief Inspector of Police Geoffrey Kinyua, and that's detailed on page 4 and page 5 of the Daily Nation. But again, we are crossing over to the protest that happened in Mombasa yesterday that pertain the government move with regards to the SGR and how that has had an impact on the workforce in County 001. As transporters now maintain that the rule is still in force, though it was suspended by the government. The Governor, Ali Hassan Joho, met the Interior and Coordination of National Government CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i and Transport CS James Masharia here in the capital, Nairobi, last week to discuss matters that pertain with regard to the deadlock that, of course, came into effect afterwards, that decision by the government. And we'll get to the nitty-gritty details of that and the protest over the cargo, which led to arrests of activists in Mombasa yesterday. But first, before we do that and seek the sentiments of Ben Newday here on the program, we have this bite for you so that you can take a look at it.
I said it before in Parliament when I was summoned by the Committee of Transport. And we said that because the directive had been issued by the CG of KRA and the MD of KPA without full consultations, within 2 days actually, we directed that it be reversed and it remains suspended.
And we have been in that meeting for a good part of this morning.
To seek partnership, more particularly on the challenges that we are facing as a county or as a region or the entire corridor.
All right, Sultan 001 there, and the leadership of Mombasa County meeting, Dr. Fred Matiang'i yesterday. However, according to a study done by the University of Nairobi School of Business and published on Friday, following a year of investigations, the county has already lost 17.4 billion Kenya shillings, 2,987 jobs, equivalent to 8.4% mathematically of its annual earnings, since the implementation of the government policies requiring the mandatory transfer of most cargo to the Madaraka SGR freight services to Nairobi in 2017.
So that then means it could be more by now.
It could be more. It could be more because we already are 2 years down the line.
Right.
And it's ambitious. It's a revolutionary. Call it what you may, the pet project of President Uhuru Kenyatta. But looking at it economically in terms of the cost, because when you talk about Mombasa County, you're talking about the larger coastal part or the Pwani region of the country. Does it have, or do we expect mathematically, in terms of visualizing this report by the University of Nairobi, perhaps in the foreseeable future, can it have a whole sense of enormous economic challenge? And what does it mean for the people of Mombasa County?
I like to look at it different. Sometimes someone has lied to us that the businesses at the port of Mombasa belong to Mombasa County. Just like people who think that the businesses at Kisumu belong to the people of Kisumu. I was arguing with people the other day. I was telling them, Lenana school might be in Dagoretti, but it's a national school, belongs to the whole nation. See about what Dagoretti. So coming to think you can cut a small piece here for the benefit of Dagoretti because you see it near you, forget it. It's a national school. Mangu school is a national school. Now,
is it an undoing of devolution in a way at this point?
No. Okay. Having said that, look at it this way. It costs 50 million to build a kilometer of road. So if you did from Mombasa to Nairobi in terms of repairs because of the overloading and so on and so forth, you'd spend about 25 billion a year just trying to maintain that road. Now, I was looking at truck drivers and I was telling them, my friends, you are like those people who were trying to ban Uber taxis when they first came. There comes a time in the history of any trade that a revolution will occur, that something very different from the norm will happen, and you have to conform with it. If you put a container in Mombasa, from Mombasa to Nairobi, they charge you anything between 80 to 100,000. And then when the owner of the trailer does his deductions and his costs, he's usually left between 40 and 50,000. That's what he makes
in profit
when he moves with this container from Mombasa to Nairobi. Luckily, along the way, there are lodgings, there are places where people eat and so on and so forth. So it's a lifeline for that road. That's a beautiful thing. But then again, I have always told people that if you left a container here at Ebru, and you wanted this container to move from Ebru to Nakumatt Junction, which is very near, only a trailer can do that. Nothing else. So if containers are moved from Mombasa to Nairobi by SGR, I think the trailer owners should be celebrating, not fighting. Because what they need to do now is to come to SGR and say, then make it open for all of us. Because now, what happens, instead of moving with a container 500 kilometers, the service, the wear and tear, the fuel and everything,
the timing,
you can move that container from SGR to Kayole, because it's not going to move in a pickup. It can only move in a trailer. And the minimum charges are usually about 20, 25,000. From SGR to Kayole is about 15 kilometers. It means a trailer can do 2 trips in a day, or 3. That trailer will make anything between 40 to 60,000 in a day. Less wear and tear, less kilometers, less siphoning of fuel, less all those other problems. If I'm a trailer owner, it means in a day I cover 70 kilometers and I make the 40, 50,000 that I used to make if I covered 500 kilometers. If this SGR moves the containers to Naivasha, from Naivasha, you cannot move that container even to the nearest warehouse
without a trailer
on your back. You can only do it on a trailer. So it means the trailers that will position themselves strategically in Naivasha will move all those things from Naivasha to Nakuru, Molo, and all the other parts of this nation. I tell you, a container that's moving from SGR here to Thika at a cost of about 35 to 40,000 is more profitable than a container moving 500 kilometers of road and to give the owner a net of 40,000 shillings. All I'm trying to say is the SGR has come. And what the people of Mombasa have not discovered is that you do not necessarily have to make money by moving a container from Mombasa to Nairobi 500 kilometers.
Years down the line, since of course the inception of SGR, allow me to just ask, it's coupled with that, years down the line, and of course these demonstrations are now gaining momentum even more at this point. Probably upon, of course, a proper, review of basically what has played out since that time. Of course, we got the SGR, just trying to understand what other ways they can make money. Then they realize that indeed, by the day, the economy of Mombasa is becoming gloomy, and the situation is getting worse. So a clear indication that maybe they might have tried all these possible solutions to a point of realizing that maybe there's so challenges that would come along with that, to a point where they would not be able to make ends meet at the end of the day. Hence the reason why they go back to the street and equally calling upon the government to reverse the decree, which was reversed, suspended at some point in time, but still again they still remain apprehensive.
Okay, good. They can continue demonstrating. I am just learning from examples in the world. Uber drivers have done that, and all of them ended up joining the application, those people who had not joined the app. In all countries where the train has come in, it has affected transporters in a big way. In every country, they need to read that and they need to understand that whether they like it or not, ultimately, nobody will be able to compete in terms of cost with the train. In fact, if they put a level playing ground and say it's not by force, it's by economies of scale and the costs of bringing the container, what will happen? Many people will opt for the train. So they need to start preparing themselves and asking themselves, what is Mombasa? It's a tourist destination. What is Mombasa? We can start making money from Mombasa as a city from many other sources other than having containers moving on trailers all over the road. I can tell you bus drivers are happy. There are less trailers on the road. There are less accidents on the road. They are taking a shorter time. I have, you know, I buy cars in Mombasa. I sell them here. I have done that road so many times. It's much, much more different from the time the train came. It's an easier drive. It's less hassle. It's everything else about it is easier. So you might think that the economy of Mombasa is losing money, but I'm thinking, is the economy of Kenya gaining any money? Because either way, the national government that wants to make money from this is still taking part of what it collects and sending to counties, including Mombasa. Yeah. So the national government, if it's benefiting from SGR, then it means that that money is going to all other parts of this nation.
Who is then supposed to do this homework? Is it the national government to come up, of course, with these ways of trying to convince the truck drivers that indeed there's also a different direction that you can take? Because you cannot outrule the fact that indeed they're registering losses in comparison to what was there back then, maybe because of lack of proper policies on board. So who is to do this homework and make sure that they are well advised in this particular case? Because yes, like they would say, or specialists, that the report that of course Ayub is talking about, they argue that indeed if we are to go on ground and figure out proper policies on dealing with, of course, the factor of SGR, then we will not be registering losses, because as it stands, SGR has registered losses. So that is one thing that we cannot rule out, So if we are to do our homework very well, ensure that we revive policies including fast tracking of course, the Dongo Kundi, as the report says, a special economic zone, and a couple of other potential industrial parks to create new employments, then maybe we'll not be experiencing this. So what is it that we have not done right? What homework didn't we do right, or assignment didn't we do proper to ensure that we get remedies or we get ways of countering this? What, of course, we expected. At some point, we expected bus drivers to complain that, yes, SGR is coming in to deny us business. But then again, all of a sudden, there's calm in the bus sector. What calm came on board? What assignment was conducted correct that is not being conducted correct on this other side?
I think I'll answer you very well. What is in the bulk of these containers? Crap from China that we can manufacture locally.
Including toothpicks.
Yes, including toothpicks and handkerchiefs and underwear all sorts of things that we can manufacture locally. What the nation needs to have done before they start insisting that things need to move on SGR is to place a total ban on imports of things that we can manufacture locally. Because if the SGR or if the container drivers are fighting to have their business back so that they can carry toothpicks in containers from the port to Nairobi, then that's a huge challenge. I think the government needs to start opening. The problem with us, we scan containers for purposes of knowing how much is there so that we charge duty. Full stop. But a nation that is thinking about the future of its children should be scanning containers and saying, wait a minute, why are we importing sofa sets? Let Kenyans, these seats are being made on Ngong Road. They are being made everywhere.
Even prisoners are good makers of seats.
So why are we importing this stuff? And if we put a 1,000% tax on imported stuff that Kenya can manufacture locally, we have created jobs. Some of those containers contain apples from South Africa and some funny-looking oranges that are so beautiful they look artificial. If we start scanning containers with building our nation in mind, we shall go far. The problem is we scan containers with the purpose of making sure that nobody escapes with duty. So the problem is not whether or not we are moving containers from Mombasa and whether they are using SGR or not. As I told you, it takes one fool to import 10 million toothpicks, but it would take maybe 1,000 Kenyans to make 10 million toothpicks, which we need in the country. So if we ban the importation of that one particular item, we would create probably 1,000 jobs. How many jobs have they lost? 2,000. So by banning toothpicks alone, we've created probably 1,000 jobs. And then when you start banning things like handkerchiefs and so many other things, it's shameful that men of my age and people like us cannot be able to have a country that can be able to manufacture underwear for its own people. It's a shame. We're even importing second-hand ones. So if we start thinking of manufacturing and looking at those things that this country can make, and even on the trailers things, the only positive thing about it is that now the amount of money that is leaving the country to other nations has reduced a bit. Because when these trailers were on the road, there was a lot of buying of tires and spare parts and so on and so
Right.
forth. So that's money that has kind of been retained in the economy, which could help the economy.
Right.
But we need to start thinking in terms of creating Kenya as a manufacturing hub. Yeah.
Okay. Of course, given that manufacturing is still one of the big four items which features top in the president's big four agenda, apparently there seems to be hard hurdles in front of that, or in the way of that. There appears to be capital flight because of the cost of production of electricity, also some of the issues that continue to hamper that big element. Because there's capital flight from the market, and Ethiopia and Rwanda are becoming safe haven and destinations for businesses that have been frustrated in Kenya because of kickbacks and corruption, equally in a report acknowledged by the Treasury. But in terms of the mathematics and the laydown of the figures that were presented by the study done by the University of Nairobi, it says that only 27% of cargo is destined for landlocked countries. I'm mentioning Uganda, South Sudan, Rwanda, and Burundi. 13% is meant for Mombasa, while 60% that is remaining is meant for the capital, Nairobi. And it says that 87% will soon be cleared from the capital, Nairobi. In the event that you mentioned, and we all know, it's an established fact that from Naivasha there is no SGR. It means then that there is more hit, that these landlocked countries that are dependent on the port city of Mombasa will be significantly, in terms of their economies, will be hit hard. And a gloomy picture is painted in the port city of Mombasa and the coastal region. That might again lead to another whole scenario, which is again insecurity, because there's going to be a cultural problem, a political problem, a societal problem. And the government appears that it has no appropriate measures to contain that, in the case of the Mombasa Republican Council, with Mighty Group in the case of the Boko Haram in northeastern part of Nigeria, which also sprang up as a result of economic, of course, consequences that led to the sidelining, according to them, by the central government in Abuja.
Okay, thank you. I think when the SGR ends in Naivasha, there are a few beautiful things about it. Museveni is happier to know his containers are closer in Naivasha than they would be further in Mombasa. And it would take the train a shorter time to get the containers to Naivasha, and then the trailers would move them from Naivasha all the way. Secondly, we have a problem because Nairobi is the capital city with a national park. It is the manufacturing hub. It is everything, even the conference hub of this nation. I have always dreamt and prayed of the day when we shall have a manufacturing hub which is not Nairobi. If we were able to move this manufacturing hub even to Naivasha, half of Nairobi's population, about 2 million people, would go. We would have less congestion, less sewage, less everything, even less constituencies and less MPs making noise to us and less MCAs and so on and so forth. So decongestion is a beautiful thing. If manufacturing alone was to move to Naivasha, that would be a good thing. And I don't think manufacturing should have moved to Naivasha. Maybe they should have taken it to another town so that Naivasha becomes the conference hub. We stop having all these conferences happening in Nairobi and causing jam in Nairobi. Then, or they make Mombasa the conference hub. In fact, if anything, I think that would what would grow the economy of Mombasa. They just make Mombasa the conference hub of Kenya. Every time there's an international conference, it's done in Mombasa. So we just need to start doing things like the Tanzania way. Arusha is the conference hub. Dar es Salaam, they are running the capital state fairs and so on and so forth, so that we don't have everything in Nairobi. The problem with our nation is that everything, even when the Pope comes, he has to come to Nairobi. Yeah.
So how then do we keep Mombasa afloat, or maybe the coast afloat as it stands right now? Because all the solutions that we are providing on the table, indeed, good enough, but then again, probably far to reach and, would be considered to be long-term solutions for that matter. As you've seen, of course, lots of stones thrown at, of course, the efforts of President Uhuru Kenyatta to ensure that the Big Four agenda is well implemented, manufacturing being a factor. Some of the key ones that are being addressed right now, of course, universal health care, infrastructure, and something of the sort. How do we keep the coast afloat, just like I asked, this particular time, until that point where we'll be able to have implemented some of these things that we're talking about, where we'll be able as a country to say that we can manufacture our very own toothpicks, our very own, small commodities, as opposed to importing them?
It's simple. It's simple. It's simple. I think the nation is spending a lot of money on all the wrong things. If, for example, the government was to make a policy that every child going to school must have 1 egg a day and 1 fruit a day, that would cause an agricultural revolution in Kenya. Because I presume there are about 10 million children who are going to school today. It means Kenya would need 10 million eggs every day. And if there's a law that these eggs cannot be imported, to have 10 million eggs, you'd need to have about 15 million chicken, because usually the laying is about 75%. So you need to have about 15 million chicken. 15 million chicken means there will be people making chicken feed, there will be people making vaccines, there will be people making all sorts of things to make sure that every child going to school is able to afford one egg, and the government makes part of it out of the budget. You know, they have free primary education, so that the school has a kitchen where they boil the eggs and every child is... That alone, you can imagine how many farmers it would employ just to make just a law saying that every child must have an egg. And then at lunch hour, every child must have a fruit. It's not specified whether it's a mango, it's an apple, it's whatever. What will happen, in some places, children will be having oranges, in some places they'll be having a pawpaw, and so on and so forth. I'm telling you, just by saying that every child must have an egg in this nation who is of primary going school, how many, I'm telling you, you've created more than 2 million jobs, which is what they have been shouting about every other day. So, and then the fruits, another 2 million jobs. You don't even have to think about Mombasa. If you create 5 million jobs as a president in this nation, you have moved far. So we think about big things, which are not necessary. I've told you a simple example. Just say that every child must have a handkerchief. Yeah, and those handkerchiefs must be made in school. I mean in Kenya.
Yeah.
Na wakienda parade wanaangaliwa kama ako handkerchief. Jamani, ukiwa mzazi, kama unalipiwa school fees yote, utashindwa kununua handkerchief. So that alone is a revolution in manufacturing. So you do not have to come and create factories. All you need to do is to block things from coming inside, and then make policies that are making sure that this is happening.
And in this very same study, of course, the biggest fault is pointed at the policies that have been put on board. And I think sometimes they might sound unrealistic, but indeed would come in with a great revolutionary factor where, of course, we're going to change the entire bit and ensure that we make the best of the economy. So I think on that very note, it's a clear indication that they still hope for the coast in the event that we sit down and consider our policies right. We take a short break. We'll be coming back on the last bit to discuss some bit of matters of politics in regards first to the cartoon edition on the Daily Nation and equally the events of the day. Of course, that declaration by, or that order by Right Honorable Raila Odinga that has got very many people not feeling very much comfortable with him.
Welcome back into the last segment of the program. This is Newday, Kenya. Now, following the Likoni tragedy, Raila Odinga was among the people who joined the government spokesperson, Colonel Cyrus Oguna, and the Member of Parliament Likoni constituency, Mishimboko, on the ongoing rescue efforts to pull out the body of a woman and her daughter who drowned about 10 days ago during the ferry incident. However, though, the move by Raila Odinga to order in some way, in inverted commas, for the stoppage of the ongoing rescue effort led to political and what might appear to be some sense of political statement with regard to those who refuted the claim, owing to the fact that they say that Raila Odinga has no say empowerment, neither does he have the authority to command the stoppage of the ongoing rescue effort by different authorities of the government in conjunction or collaboration with the divers who have been sourced out from outside the country. And among them is, of course, the Tanga Tanga element of the ruling Jubilee Party who are allied to the Deputy President William Ruto, who, during a church service over the weekend, said, among them, of course, was Rigathi Gachagua, the Member of Parliament, Madira constituency, that Raila Odinga's influence in government needs to stop at the point of the handshake, and that he doesn't need to cross into the political bedroom. Of course, he was talking about the handshake, which has been an uncertain point of the ruling Jubilee Party. But first, before we get to the cartoon edition, which also reflects on that, here's what Mr. Odinga said over the weekend.
But now is not the time to apportion the blame. Now is the time to try to retrieve the bodies of those unfortunate Kenyans. But we have also come to see what can be done or what is being done to ensure that the vehicle and the bodies are retrieved. What we want to start here is that we are told that some dredging work is going on here somewhere, which is interfering with the exercise of trying to retrieve the bodies here. I want to give an order here that the dredging work should stop immediately so that those who are working here can work without interference of the kind of debris that are being emitted under the water, which interferes with the visibility under the water here.
All right, that happened over the weekend, and it did, of course, attract statements made by the allies of the Deputy President, William Ruto. So in regard to that, the paper does detail this Tuesday morning, and this is what we have on the papers. Yes, the Raila Odinga Agwambo at the very top of that vehicle. However, though, while at the top he is managing to steer the car into the next destination, President Uhuru Kenyatta sits pretty much comfortable at the front seat, but there's no steering apparently because it's popping out, and Raila Odinga is the the determinant factor here in terms of the direction of the vehicle. But on the back seat is the Deputy President William Ruto, who, according to him, the president is the leader or the driver of the party, the Jubilee Party, but Raila Odinga up top ever since the handshake has had sway or influence in government. And this again has played out in the Likoni tragedy, where rescue efforts are ongoing by multi-agency government authorities and those who have been sourced out from outside the country to retrieve the body of the woman and her daughter. So we are coming back to seek the sentiments of Ben with regards to that and how this again might be or is a reflection of what's happening in government, and to be specific, the ruling Jubilee Party. I don't know where or whether the pledge they made in 2016 with pomp and celebration that they will rule the country until 2032 is likely going to materialize. But in terms of the Odinga factor here, is he perhaps the point with which the ruling Jubilee Party might completely fracture or disintegrate?
Interesting. I love this. Think about it this way, because this is how we need to look at it. If President Uhuru Kenyatta was the deputy president in the Republic of Kenya, and Honorable William Ruto was the president of the Republic of Kenya, and President Kenyatta was moving around the country campaigning Tanga, 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 and President Kenyatta, being the deputy, hypothetically speaking, was going to Rift Valley and doing harambes and doing all the things that William Ruto is doing in Central Province. If President Kenyatta was the deputy of William Ruto, and if President Kenyatta was, his name was being mentioned in every scandal, including that of dams and everything, and if President Kenyatta, being the deputy of William Ruto, had gone and sourced for a footballer and made him the candidate for Kibra and brought him to the president for coronation, and if President Kenyatta was the deputy of William Ruto, and all the things that William Ruto is doing as deputy today were being done by Kenyatta, being the deputy, where do you think the nation would be? Or how do you think Ruto would handle that? Many have argued, even those who support Ruto very closely, that he cannot stand in subordination. He's not the kind, I don't think this nation would be holding together if it was William Ruto president and Uhuru Kenyatta
and what is
deputy
doing is done by Uhuru.
And doing exactly what Ruto is
the
doing. So what President Kenyatta has done, one, is to remain the gentleman he has always been, to try to calm down. And because he's not interested in fighting his deputy president, he has brought him, Raila Amolo Odinga, so that he can act as a system of checks and balances. So that today, when Ruto thinks that he's got the absolute power, the president reminds him that there's a Raila here who, if you vied with him today by day on an open ballot, any day, would get more votes than you. I mean, you saw he got very close to what President Uhuru Kenyatta had if IEBC results were correct. Let's believe they were. So all I'm trying to say is, he's trying to say that this man has the approval of close to 50% of Kenyans. And on every time he walks, this guy walks with 6-7 million votes hanging around him. And so if he comes and places such an order, I'm not saying that he has got the powers constitutionally, but in law there's something called a de jure leader and a de facto leader. Raila Amolo Odinga is a de facto leader. He's a leader by fact. He's not a leader by law. He may not have the trappings of power and the titles of power, but de facto, that if Raila today said that half of Kenyans think this way, it is true because those half of Kenyans follow him. I don't know whether Ruto has got the authority to say that half of Kenyans would follow him independently as a person. So I think what he said there, he said as somebody who felt that de facto I am a leader. And if this dredging is what is going to make this thing happen, then let it be stopped. As to whether or not I had constitutional powers to say that, that's a story for another day. But morally, I had the power to say that.
Well, every Kenyan morally has the, of course, the authority, and that notwithstanding the constitutionality aspect of it, but ethically also, everyone has the responsibility to call the shot when it needs to be done so.
True to it, and of course, being a senior citizen, right, Honorable Raila Odinga himself is one of the figures that you definitely say that confidently he would do that without being questioned. But now, coming to the factor and the reality on ground, on the substance of this particular issue, where you realize that indeed there is that need for such an order to be made, or probably there's that need for that direction that he orders for us to take be done. And there are other leaders who are coming out to say that nobody should go by that order. What then does it showcase of the will of the leadership that we have on board towards addressing the issues that directly affect the common mwananchi, because it was of essence and of substance for some of these issues to be done the way, of course, that declaration came to help solve the situation that is on ground?
I think first and foremost, I would like to condole the families of the people who have perished in this unfortunate tragedy. And also I want them to go and read Revelation chapter 20 verse 13, which says that on the judgment day, the sea shall be caused to vomit all the people it has swallowed. God had envisioned in his wisdom that at some point in time, there will be people who will perish at sea. And on the judgment day, there will be people who will not come from their graves, but will come from the sea. I think the exercise that is going on in Mombasa might not bear fruit. And it's good to start preparing the family for this. The truth is that if today you take a very big ship and leave it on the ocean, forget to anchor it, tomorrow morning you look for that ship in your pockets. So people are thinking, especially people who have never gone past Mtito one day, that the ocean is a swimming pool, and that down there it looks flat the way you step on a swimming pool, and it's that easy. It's very difficult and very different down there. And unajua vile watu wanasema siku hizi kwa ground mambo ni tofauti. So on the ocean there, the things are very different. Mambo ni tofauti kwa ground. And I am tempted to believe that that car is nowhere near there. When we had the unfortunate Mtongwe ferry accident, 2 days later some bodies were found in Kilifi and others in Malindi. Okay? When the Mtongwe ferry accident happened. 2 days later. Because this is a tunnel. It is crazy. Some people come and say, oh, we have a diver from Sweden. He came. He has been doing 200 meters. I challenge you. Today you can go and climb Mount Kenya, which is 5,000 feet. But when you're told to do some hills in Marsabit, which are only 500 feet or 600 feet or 300 feet, you're not able to do them.
Because of the different terrain.
Because the different terrain and the topography and everything. So people who come and say, oh, they have been diving deep in the ocean too. Yes, you can go and look for a camp place in the ocean. We even hear there are places in the ocean where there is fresh water underneath. So there are some camp places where you can even do 400 meters. We don't dispute. But this particular tunnel is crazy. The currents are there, the temperatures are bad, the visibility is poor, and so many other factors. I think we need to start preparing the family and to tell the family that, yes, everything will be done to save the bodies of their loved ones. But having said that, be reminded that we are risking life for body. We are risking human life for human body. And if we had to choose the two, then you know who would choose. So let us not be there. And I ask people, I keep saying, people are saying, oh, the Kenya Navy is incompetent and so on. And I'm telling them, my dear friends, if my brother was a Navy officer, or if your wife or your husband or your son was a Navy officer, you'd be glad to receive them home jobless than to receive them home in a coffin. Or to go and throw flowers at sea, because this means you're burying at sea.
All right. Still
so there's a possibility of doing a requiem mass at sea or by the seashore.
Oh my goodness.
It is possible.
Well,
and
it is.
when you read Revelation 2013, these are not going to be the first.
Well,
God had provided for that there's a possibility that human beings will end up in the sea, and on the judgment day, they are going to resurrect from the sea.
Still on the Odinga factor, I just allow him to answer this question that I asked again. Of course, this leader is telling us to ignore, maybe telling, of course, the officials down on ground to ignore that declaration or that order. Could they have probably envisioned what you're saying, that their likelihoods were not going to be fruitful on this? Or maybe they're just politicizing these issues that are indeed of national interest?
The dredging that happens here, we need to know, is a very serious issue. Dredging is similar to every other day preparing the road that you use. Like, you know, the way Kanjo officers sweep our streets, and if they don't do it for 2-3 days, you'll notice. That seabed is constantly being dredged out for anything that could affect the movement of ships and even the ferries and so on and so forth. So even if they were to stop the dredging exercise, they wouldn't stop it for a long time. The reason it's done is not because the people are very happy to be under the water and dredging every other day, but it's because if it's not done, it will bring to a chock-a-block. It's a tunnel. So every other time there's a lot of rubbish that is swept by the sea and deposited here, and it has to continuously be dredged. But for people telling the others to ignore the Raila Amolo Odinga order, they are not talking of it because it's an order that relates to this particular matter. They are just thinking that in future he'll start giving other orders with regards to IEBC and the judiciary and so on and so forth, which also we need to be careful about having non-elected leaders coming to give orders on matters that pertain to the nation.
All right.
Okay. Sure. Then given all that development, of course, with regards to, without not forgetting how even in 2018, October, the Lion air crash in Indonesia's 737 MAX Boeing was never recovered aside from the black box. But given that and how this is happening with regards to the political, again, connotations that is dotted with the rescue efforts and how Raila Odinga factor led to the statements made by the Tanga Tanga element of the ruling Jubilee Party. And that has been the uncertainty ever since they expressed the Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta handshake happened at the doorsteps of Harambee House. Does it further reveal, owing to, of course, what I will want to attach with regards to the Kibra parliamentary by-elections, where some believe that Mariga has been fronted by the Deputy President William Ruto, and that there is another faction, the Kileweke, which says that the President supports the ODM party candidate Imran Okoth. Further again, in terms of the divisions and the deep cracks in the ruling Jubilee Party, is it one that might lead to, again, a fallout between the President and the Deputy, perhaps to the fracture point, the total fracture point, with regards, of course, the sort of indirect proxy political wars between the Tanga Tanga and the Keleweke factions, which again led to the mutation of the women element, the Inua Mama, Jenga Taifa, and the Embrace team, which embraces the handshake, while Inua is in support of the Deputy President William Ruto and wants the implementation of the 2013 Accord. Is it again generally a political one that mirrors a 2022 political game that's likely going to be between Odinga and Ruto?
First and foremost, the President and Raila need to come out and tell us what they discussed, because we cannot keep defending them. They walked into a room, they never consulted us.
Are you in support of the handshake?
Once they came out, they never told us. You see, we support the handshake to the extent that it has brought about peace, stability, tranquility, and the fact that for the first time I could see people in ODM and Jubilee meeting on a political campaign, wanapitana, wanasalimiana. That was phenomenal. That is one beautiful thing about the handshake, because I cannot remember a time when, you know, when an ODM a guy wearing an orange T-shirt met with a guy wearing a red T-shirt. That was sparks, that was fire, that was war. But now it has brought about some sense of tranquility, that we are seeing people in red T-shirts deep into the heart of Kibera campaigning, and people in orange T-shirts campaigning, and they are saying hi to one another and their friends. To that extent, the handshake is a beautiful thing. But what we need to know is that, are there other things that they discussed that we are supposed to know? Because now we are seeing Raila making declarations. We are seeing so many sorts of things that we do not understand. We need to understand everything about the handshake so that we can either support or reject the handshake. But also, having said that, I think the Deputy President owes it unto Kenyans. You know, the reason we have Kieleweke is because we have Tanga Tanga. Think of it that way. If we did not have Tanga Tanga, we would not have Kieleweke. So if he meant well for this nation, what he would do is say, we are killing Tanga Tanga for now. We are killing all political movements. We are killing all movements around the nation for the sake of this country until 2022. If Tanga Tanga died, Kieleweke would die. But if Kieleweke dies, Tanga Tanga does not die. So it has to be the Deputy President to wake up and say, wait, I'm killing this Tanga Tanga thing, because if I kill it, Kieleweke will die. The nation will have peace. Then the President doesn't have to involve Raila. Because right now, Raila is the checkmate. Ruto misbehaves, Raila controls.
We might be looking at this as, you know, a political factor and based on what we see on the ground. But are there likelihoods that also, in his very own capacity as AU Special Envoy, that's why he proceeded, you know, on matters infrastructure, that's why he proceeded to sort of make such an order, as opposed to, you know, the political factor in the country that we witness today, and the fact that now they're more of associates with President Uhuru Kenyatta?
That could be true. That could be true. But you see now, viewed from a political angle, the other people are thinking that he's trying to first probe for weak spots and see whether he can make another order tomorrow. So, but I think the statement was made in good faith. The statement was not made in with politics in mind. I mean, he would have made that in Nairobi, but he was on site. And I think he was there and they informed him and they told him, Honorable former Prime Minister, this is the situation.
This and this could have
We are trying to get in there, but there's dredging going on and so on and so forth. And so he makes that order as, yes, an AU Special Envoy and also as a de facto leader in this nation. But I think what he also needs to check as a person is on the excesses of that, so that he does not get to the position where he even makes orders on the judiciary and so many other places.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do they worry? Do they express a genuine political cause then when they see Raila Odinga, or generally is it one that they have been, of course, on the same political route with regards to the fears that they do harbor in regards to Raila Odinga being the hurdle or the scuttler of the DP William Ruto's chances to be the president in 2022? Is there any genuinity political about the statements they're making, or basically this is about ensuring that they do checkmate Raila Odinga and his advances politically within the ruling Jubilee Party ever since the handshake?
Let's look at it this way. Raila Amolo Odinga got more votes in the coastal region than did the Jubilee Party. That's a fact. So what makes Jubilee feel so entitled? Yes, they're in government, and yes, they are the ruling party. But what makes them feel so entitled to go there and make declarations, and they have a problem with the man who got more votes from going there and seeing and, you know, empathizing with the family and being... Because the people of Mombasa would also feel, in as much as you never make it to the presidency, we gave you our votes, and we feel that you owe us even a trip. We are mourning, why can't you even come to this place? So I feel his going there was correct, and I feel that his going there made the people who believe in him, because there are people who believe in him, feel that he is also part and parcel of the challenges that they are going through. Because sometimes when you mourn or sometimes when you have a problem, you just want to see the leader that you voted for come there, hata kama ni maombolezi ya kae na nyinyi. Aseme nimesema pole, akunywe chai ya maombolezi, na maybe aandike kitabu. That sometimes is what families want. And I think in his going there, it was right. And in his being there was nothing wrong about it.
As the Swahili saying would say, fahali wawili hawakazi zimoja. In this case, we witnessed fahali watatu. Of course, the president, we see the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, and equally the deputy president, you know, who was equally voted in, just like the president was. Where, don't you think then it places the country in a very delicate balance, in as much as we are enjoying and celebrating that peace, tranquility, like you rightfully put it?
Mwai Kibaki tried having Raila out of government and in the cold.
It was not easy.
It was a tedious coalition.
So that in this case, we're reversing the saying?
He discovered that keep your enemies closer. As close as you can, even closer than your friends. I think the best place to have Raila Amolo Odinga, if you ask me, is in a place where you give him state security, state car, state everything, and give him, in fact, put a red carpet wherever he goes. Make sure, see your nusu carpeti, red carpet, cool.
Power is all he wants.
Give Raila the peace of mind that he needs to survive. And when there's a national function like Nyayo Stadium, invite him. Tell him to come and say hi to Kenyans. Acknowledge him. Sometimes even send him on some things. You know, the president was supposed to make a speech somewhere. Send him. Tell him you are also a Kenyan and you are a leader. Go and do this on behalf of the nation. You know, because when you do that, because when you think about it, that man means well for Kenya. If today there was a conference, for example, on anything, and it was in Ethiopia, and you sent him, do you think Raila will go there and say, do not bring that business to Kenya?
He will sell our agenda
very well. He will go and sell our agenda there. So why don't we start looking at it from the point of view of, don't exclude those people who lose in elections completely. Give them an opportunity, to play a part in the meaningful development of the nation. And if you ask me, I think Uhuru is doing right. Even the way they got Kalonzo a job, they should also consider every other. In fact, Mudavadi is in the he's always talking on Sunday after church. It's the only time you people from the media cover him. So I think he might become a bishop. So before he becomes a bishop, and he's a politician, let's give him a chance to also play a meaningful role in the development of this nation.
All right. As one analyst will always put it, that even his physique matches that of a bishop, so he's just stick to bishop.
Well, I'm sure he also made statements that were important and worthy of discussion when he was in the US last week on Thursday, when he said the handshake was precipitated or necessitated by foreign pressure and the threats of visa cancellations, and that will have had impact.
They fault him. The Luya Nation sort of faults him as one of the
ODM party issued a statement to be in particular.
Yes.
And it was Edwin Sifuna who responded to him.
But they say they have made the Luya Nation or the Mlembe Nation more of briefcase carriers as opposed to...
But Ben, one final question here before we wrap things up here. Excuse me. Is that about, despite all this happening and the fact that the Ruto faction of the Jubilee Party might see Raila Odinga as a threat to, of course, the crown of the presidency in 2022. The Odinga again serves as the African Union Special Envoy for Infrastructure across the continent. And of course, owing to his political engineering process and how he has managed to outmaneuver even the Kanu regime of President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi, at some point leading to its complete disintegration in the build-up to the 2002 elections. There are some who fear that a similar scenario might play out in 2022, and that despite the handshake, Raila has an underneath political agenda to achieve in 2022. While that is acknowledged and considered politically, how does the current position at the African Union level help Raila Odinga consolidate influence across the continent and perhaps make him swing back into the political arena with vigor, a lot of energy, and a possible political new outfit that might propel him to the presidency in the event he contests in 2022?
Okay, thank you. I think first and foremost, him holding that position at the African Union is a good thing. It's a position that is usually held by former heads of states. So he has held a position that he ordinarily would not be holding, but because most of the people who've held those positions have been former heads of state. So he's holding a very good position. He's being treated as someone who's already become a head of state and completed the term and served. So that's a good thing. And it puts him on the global map. It makes him a prominent African leader who is meeting with all the presidents of other states, and that can consolidate his view for 2022. But having said that, President Uhuru Kenyatta is not so keen on 2022. And what he's looking to do is to manage the politics between now and 2022. And that's why when you look at him, he's like, if you guys are talking 2022, I'm not there. So it will be a fight between Ruto and Raila and whoever else will be there, the Mudavadis and every other person. As for President Uhuru Kenyatta, all he cares about is maintaining peace between now and then.
And leave a legacy.
Yeah, if in 2022 you guys end up voting for whoever you're going to vote, it's up to you. Yeah.
All right. That's more like it. Thank you so much, Ben Kinuthia. Lawyer, of course, will always have that pleasure of having him joining us on set. And you know, when he joins us, he does not mince his words. He will give you as he sees it. Thank you so much also for the great insights we have to say, and equally for taking care, for you know, just joining us up from the time we started up until now. Of course, we cannot go through some of the questions you've asked, or maybe the numerous messages that you've sent in, but we say thank you so much for that great feedback. And we're looking forward to see you again tomorrow as we continue with discussions of issues that, you know, of course, regard us, and are of issues that are of great importance to us. My name is Linda Alela. It was great having you. I throw it back to Ayub to wind the session.
Thank you. Always 3 ways to get in touch with us: on facebook.com/ebru TV Kenya. The hashtag on Twitter is NewDayKE, at ebru TV Kenya, and of course on www.ebrutv.co.ke, where you have a lineup of discussions that we have had, of course, of today and the previous days. I am Ayub Abdikadir Abdi. We'll see you tomorrow by the grace of God. In about an hour's time, Winnie will be here with my doctor on this Tuesday, 8th of October 2019. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. Good morning.